Hi, I'm Iris. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're having a great day and that you're enjoying the event thus far and that you'll continue to enjoy it. So in general, throughout this video, I'm going to be looking in this direction over here because my piece is up there and the process is going to begin soon. So we're going to be narrating the general gist of what's going on and talking about having a friendly chat about finding your workflow and just process and workflow related ideas, finding your own workflow, discovering workflow or techniques or thinking about that kind of thing, being aware of it. Because something I find really interesting over the last, few years is instead of feeling like I'm stumbling into what I'm doing and wasting time or doing something ineffectively, doing something more on purpose or with more consciousness. And this, I feel like it's more effective and serves you more, and you can also consciously explore and have fun and be less limited too. So it's not just about like putting yourself some limits. Anyways, so before we watch the process of the other video, the other piece that you saw just moments ago, I wanted to show a couple of processes of other pieces that I've done before so that we can familiarize ourselves with with the way I tend to do things, and hopefully maybe you'll pick up something that is useful for you, maybe not. We're all different artists and we have different approaches and techniques. But anyways, so while you're watching these, I think it'd be interesting to ask yourself if you're doing something, if I'm doing something that you would never do, or if I'm doing something the same way that you do it, or I think that's really interesting. I feel like in the past few years, there has been a big narrative to not compare yourself to other artists. But I actually think a lot of functions of comparing ourselves to other human beings in general are positive if we take it in the right way as an informative tool. You don't have to feel pressure to be like me or be like anybody else, but if somebody else's ways inspire you, or even the difference between you inspires you, or there's something interesting there, use it to your advantage, and you may have locked yourself off from that by fearing the comparison. Anyways, this is my opinion. It's my hot take on things. Anyways, so when I talk about workflow, I'm during this talk, the general idea is workflow and process. But when I talk about workflow, I just want to mention that I'm really talking about several things. The initial title for this conversation was Reasons to Try Looser or Cleaner Workflow. So this is kind of the direction I'm going into in this discussion that we'll be having throughout this video. But I think that it has, it's like an all-encompassing topic, It has to do with the order you do things in, the way you look at things, your mentality, your thought process before you start a piece, and also while you're painting a piece or drawing or animating or building something in 3D or anything similar. It can also have to do a lot with your techniques, your tools you use, your brushes, your softwares. I think I said that, maybe. So here we go. Here we go. In this video we're watching right now, we are watching how I'm working with like a sketchy line and just like a bunch of color experimentation and such. I don't really want to say anything too specific about what's going on because it's more clearly visual in the recording what's going on. But I just want to generally in this conversation encourage ideas of exploration and suiting yourself and finding out which things are conducive to you and your either your creative journey, like just finding out what kind of artist you want to be, what kind of work you want to make, and what can help you get there. Is the workflow thing and the process thing, it's really, I feel like there's much more than meets the eye. I feel like an artist trapped in the wrong workflow might hate and resent art. Whereas if you could find other techniques or ways to approach things, you might even like open up something that you didn't know you could be doing, you know. I mean, yeah, this is like a very open topic, and I find it really interesting, and I'm really passionate about it. So whenever I see how other people do things, I think it's super interesting. You get like a window into the type of artist they are. And also, I find that we all tend to do things a certain way, and it like speaks of our psychological state, or like emotional tendencies, or techniques, you know. Just like if you're a very technical person, you do things a specific way. It's very, very interesting. And also the way it develops with where you are in your journey and how long you've been painting. If you're painting just for, or drawing, or do, I mean, when I say painting, I'm really talking about anything, like insert your word, you know. By the way, you see some words on the screen. Is because these are some Twitch streams that I had recorded. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit scatterbrained during this, and I already forgot the thing I had interrupted myself saying. But I remember something I want to mention. Anyway, so the video just started for the main piece that was displayed on the screen at the beginning with the like orange color scheme. And so I'm starting with a really loose sketch. And this is something I like to do. I kind of, by now, I understand in my own technique what I'm implying with my lines. So I really, really have a lot of fun going from loose line to masses of color and like blocks of color and paint right away. I find it also very frustrating because it doesn't look good for a very long time. But it's okay. That's kind of part of the struggle, right? You go from the transparent or white or whatever color canvas to, you know, whatever it becomes later, and several stages of denial, anger, you know, just like several emotions on the way to the final result of the satisfaction of your piece, or the dissatisfaction with your piece that you end up with. Anyways, so during this video, there's a few empty spots where like nothing's happening on the canvas because I was speaking with friends, finding reference, you know, just like a normal process where you're being a human being. And I didn't want to cut those out because I feel like it kind of reminds me to maybe slow down, take a breath. I tend to speak too quickly, try to put too many words into every moment because I feel like it needs information. But yeah, so the visual aspect of watching this process is going to be pretty self-explanatory because it's not quite so sped up as I usually have my processes at. And I was thinking lately actually about how useful it would be to narrate some of my process videos. I have been putting them up on my YouTube channel pretty, actually not regularly at all. I was about to say pretty regularly, but no. But anyways, I don't know if you know about Ate Gailan, Snati, but he has several videos of his process, and he narrates them really, really insightfully, I would say. And I think that's incredibly useful for not only the artists themselves, so him, but for any viewer, and you know, anybody who's interested at all in art or doing art or trying to improve it is something specific. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that watching your own work and attempting to explain what's going on is very it's just like an interesting experiment. Even just not without the narration, just watching your own process is super interesting. You start to see things you tend to do, especially if you record multiple pieces. Anyways, here I'm making a lasso selection from the rough line, and I'm using a polygonal tool. I think that this it was really just a random choice. Either I like to use the lasso, regular lasso, it's more organic because it captures kind of like your jitters and your curves in your hand, or the polygonal one, you just kind of place a few points. It's kind of like the connect the dots artworks when you're young. So I use the polygonal tool to kind of retain some kind of a graphic, clean cut quality to the fills I was making. Right now I'm zooming in on the character because it's more refined, I guess. And this is a really simple piece. It's like on purpose, I decided that I would speak about, I'm sorry if I'm banging on my desk a little bit. On purpose, I decided that I would take a fairly simple piece and discuss it, because the process here is, I'm not really stumbling over any problems really, other than just discovering what I would like it to look like. Actually, yeah, one thing I wanted to mention that I almost forgot is that when I started this piece, before I filled in the colors, when I had just the lines, I had been imagining that it would be I think it happens to me a lot. I usually imagine just a normal daylight color scheme where it will be blue sky and green grass and a brown tree trunk. And if you know my work, you know that I try to really explore color and palette a lot. This is something I do on purpose, because when I started doing art, I used really, really boring colors, and they were really desaturated all the time. So I really try to make a conscious effort, not only for the final result to be more pleasing to me, but to test myself and push myself and enjoy what I'm doing. I try to make pieces that are really lively, and also it's just something I find very interesting. Anyway, so on that thought, a lot of times I will think of a piece originally like, oh, okay, this will be green grass and just normal local colors on a normal day. But then nowadays, not nowadays, like very recently, but actually for the last couple of years, I've been thinking about more interesting, like right away you might want to not necessarily discard your first idea, but attempt to see if something else will be better. Yeah. And so the reason that you see me taking a little break here right now in the video, it's normal. It didn't interrupt itself or anything. I'm just taking, I'm either collecting reference or something like that, thinking about what to do, or having some conversation with art friends. Yeah, so the thing that I did before I moved on and I introduced the light was that I collected reference for hills, cliff sides, trees, different lighting situations also. So I thought that I should allow myself to make an interesting color scheme. And the reason I say allow myself is that, like I said, I used to instinctually kind of go for like a safe color scheme, something that just comes to mind right away. But when I was looking up reference, I found these really interesting photos that had like a really strong backlight and a really warm, super comforting, like a summer afternoon color to it, and even a little bit fall kind of feeling too, because of the warm colors. So I found those references really interesting, so I decided to use them and go kind of really intense with the light. Sorry, there's some kind of a noise outside. So I decided I would go ahead for a really intense color scheme. And actually the idea I had doesn't show up for a long time in the painting. Sorry, I said I made like a very sudden sound. The idea I had for the lighting doesn't show up until quite a bit into the process. And I actually find that this is one of the most annoying things that happens to me during workflow or process. One second, I just want to mention that you'll see in the layer window that I am using masks and selections. I'll explain as I go about what that is. But yeah, so right back to what I was saying. Something that I find is one of the most annoying things, and actually it frustrates me every single painting, and it's one of those situations where if you know something is going to frustrate you, why still let it frustrate you? So this is like a struggle that we have as artists, right? When your process or your workflow or just the general act of making art, I'm not sure. Maybe there are people who love every single part of it wholeheartedly and will give themselves wholly to every step to a step of the way in making an image or an animation or a 3D object or anything at all. But to be honest, I am really quite impatient. I have a fear of wasting time and stagnance. Like, I may have mentioned that already, and that's why I like to make a process that avoids and kind of like steps around things I don't enjoy. And a big thing that I don't enjoy is when the painting looks bad and it doesn't look like what you want yet. So the reason I think process is really interesting is tied to that. I think that we can find ways, or that we should try to at least, find ways to do ourselves some favors. Oh, maybe you hear the bells outside. I really like this sound. But yeah, so the reason I think about workflow and process, like I was saying, is that it's like a way to avoid a lot of pain and suffering and frustration. Because like I said, I just want the result to, I really like when the result is as close to possible to being an approximation of the final result as soon as possible, if that makes sense. I would like it to be almost as fast as possible with as least steps possible for it to be a symbol, let's say, of the end result. And this is something that I think there are a lot of ways to practice. And I'm not doing some of those things because some of those things are very difficult and I have been putting them off. Oh, some of those things I think that give you the tools to do that very well are traditional painting, because you are, or ink drawing, you know, anything more permanent and tangible and without undos and fanciness, because you really have to think about what you're doing. And if you mess up too many times, the paper gets messed up. You can, you know, like, there are punishments, basically, there are consequences to things. Whereas a lot of us, when we get so used to and comfortable with digital, you know, we're taking the long way around, I guess, right? To learning decisions and permanence. So yeah, I'm talking a bit too much about like the ideas, I guess, and not enough about the painting itself. You saw, I mean, I don't know how much I should explain exactly what I'm doing, but I used some selections and I filled with some brushstrokes in those areas. And then I made a adjustment layer that was for playing with the colors to get the right mood going. Yeah, and I feel like I'm going to be trying to go back to what I was saying before and get a little bit lost. So let's just go with the flow, whatever I'm doing right now. So now you see I'm making selections. I decided I would start putting in the light, and I know that I want it to be intense. I really want there to be like a chiseled look to these, the way the light hits. This is something that in real life is one of my favorite things in the whole world. I just think like we as artists are blessed with almost like and I don't mean blessed in a religious way, like it just, you know, just, that's just a cool thing, you know, with the desire and the curiosity and the task, like it's our job to observe the world and its wonders, you know. So one of the most wondrous things for me is light, and the way that when it's really vivid and strong. I don't really like light situations where it's just overcast and all you see is occlusion. I really like when the sun is like speaking to you, you know. Yeah, so this stage right now that you see the piece is at, it's suffering of this thing that I often do, and that I was the idea of traditional painting, which I had actually planned to get out a lot this year and to do a lot of traditional painting in the streets, but then the pandemic happened. But anyways, I think that when you force yourself to make really big decisions from the start, and not be shy about it, you end up with a better result faster, and that's good. So anyways, what I'm saying in general with what I'm trying to get at is that I took the long way around here. I made these like kind of half-hearted decisions where if you look at this and you compare it to the piece the way it was at the beginning of the video, I mean, when the almost finished version, you'll notice that it's at this moment right now in the video, it's neither here nor there. It's the shadow parts are too light and the light parts are too dark. So it's this shy kind of middle statement where it's not saying anything at all, really. Like it's okay right now, but what I really like is when it has punch. So I'm trying to use my selections that I made and my I feel like I gave myself breadcrumbs, kind of, for example, just as like a way to put it, or tools to help myself, like my future self, with these selections, so that I could quickly grab the areas, like the large areas that I need to put into shadow, or make more saturated, or pop out in some way, or you also can use those same tools to make things quieter, more background. So yeah, something I really like in what I was just saying is that you can have the separate silhouettes of the elements in your pieces, like a tree over there or bushes here. I really like to divide that by depth as well. Like, you'll have things that overlap each other on different layers, and then you can either use the selection tool with the lasso and like all that kind of thing, or selecting the content of your layer and then you have the selection, or you can use clipping masks, and either way it's good. They're very useful tools and they also overlap each other. You can use lasso tools and selections and clipping masks, and I think that this is a very powerful tool. It's super, super powerful because, and also you can use that and layer modes and adjustment layers. It's not very traditional, but I find it super, super useful. And I think, oh yeah, okay, I wanted to discuss that a lot of this stuff, this kind of like it's very digital in origin. The idea of, well, I know you can use masking tape or, what is it called? Kind of like some, is it resin or something? I'm not sure exactly the name of it. Like I said, I had planned to understand traditional more, but it's something I've been putting off for ages. The material that you can cover areas of your painting in, and then you can like peel it off and they don't receive the paint that you've added. It's like a masking fluid, I think it's called. Anyway, so selections and things are inspired by that. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this isn't very much of a painterly way to paint. You know, if you're trying to be very traditionalist and based on painting techniques. So people who are more into that might disagree with things like layer management, you know, or like dividing every single part of your painting into layers, and using lassos and clipping masks and things like this. You know, take it or leave it. It's, of course, it's up to you, according to your tendencies and your preferences and your understanding of fundamentals, or what you would like to stick to, or just your visual taste as well. Because I know that I've often received the comment, and I know, like I understand that that my work is very, like, has a lot of sharp edges and is very graphic. This is something actually I seek. Like, I enjoy this. I like when there's really sharp edges and really soft edges in the same painting. So this is something that I really enjoy. Of course, you can still use the tools that I'm using if you think they're useful, but you can use them in your own way, and you can they can end up having a completely different look, especially with the way you handle the selections. And I know that I'm not sure how to do it in Clip Studio, but in Photoshop you can enter a quick mask, and you can see the selection you've made. You can soften the edges, and you can do things like you can edit the selection, you can feather it, you can grow it in or out, you can give it like you can give it texture, you can, anyways, you can, what I'm saying is don't necessarily tie your association of how somebody uses a tool to that person's style. I think that would be detrimental because, for example, I think that some people think of a specific thing in their head when they imagine the use of photos or the use of 3D. But it is possible for you to achieve different results than the ones you've seen of people using any technique. So I really encourage anybody listening to be much more open-minded about the way you can approach things and the techniques you can use and the tools. Because if you try to build like a very interesting toolkit, and not only that, like not only finding things that you feel are useful to you, but even finding things that you are not used to and you know you will not understand how to use, or that, do you know what I mean? I'm going to refer to some notes that I had taken while I take a breath because I'm trying to speak too much and too fast. I really do hope that there's some coherent ideas coming across. I think there are, yeah. I'm just getting a little bit kind of trying to say a lot of things at once. So on the thing I was just saying, where I suggest that you use some techniques that you aren't familiar with, I think that challenging yourself with unfamiliarity is a very, very useful tool. It can, if I speak for myself, challenging myself with unfamiliarity has always been a great, great source of improvement. And not only improvement, but future skill. So when you develop skills that you don't have, you understand everything a little bit better, and you understand that skill, or you can, it's even like there's no waste. Basically there's no waste when you're exploring these tools, because you're either exploring something and finding out exactly how to use it and how it's perfect for you, or you're finding out that it's not for you at all and that you hate it. Both of those things are useful. So there's really no losing, unless you don't even like art at all, and you shouldn't be doing it at all. You know what I mean? There's no losing. If you're trying to learn how to use Blender, or if you're trying to use layers in a different way, the only situation in which you're wasting time is if you'd rather be asleep or something. I don't know. I just think that if you're talking about art and progress, attempting, at least attempting. I'm not talking about sinking like a whole weeks and hours into something, but at least checking out different tools might really, really come in handy. So I think I've sold that enough. And also with the idea of challenging yourself with unfamiliarity, I think you develop your own just resilience, you know? It's fine to be unfamiliar with things, and it's fine to take a step into the dark and feel like your stomach, drops out from under you. That's okay. That makes you stronger. And yeah, you'll just become more curious, you'll be able to discuss things with people who use that software. You'll like, if you find conversations online or in Discords or any kind of, or when you meet someone at a workshop, you can say, oh, hey, I tried that software or that technique that I've seen you use, or have you tried this? Or do you know what I mean? It really benefits you in every way. Anyways, so another thing I wanted to mention was that thinking about your workflow and exploring workflow, and even sticking a spoke in your own wheels and making sure you trip over and doing things that are unfamiliar, they force you to find creative solutions to things. This is super useful. By the way, the reason we're zoomed into the image right now is that I recorded this part incorrectly. It was like on my other screen, so it's just kind of like a blurry, less quality version of the painting. But the only thing I'm doing right now is that I'm working on the character. I just gave him solid colors and a tiny amount of form, like almost none, because it's not the focus. That brings me to a good point. And once again, I know I'm kind of not saying things in any particular order, but that's what I wanted to make out of this. I just wanted it to be in discussion, you know, as you know, as just as it goes, as it comes along. So the thing I'm doing with the character, so like I said, the focus is not for the character to be super rendered or have a lot of form, because my focus when I came into this image, I knew once I had established where it would go, that it's not about the detail or the specifics about any one of the elements in the image. It's about the overall impression of the light and how, in the end, you know, doesn't really do it yet, but it will later, I find. I think it does it later. It kind of hits you with this feeling of light and warmth. And lately, I'm really enjoying understanding my focus, chiseling and specifying what I'm doing to suit that focus. And this is when I feel like I'm in the best position to create a successful image. And if you've heard me talk about appeal or anything like that, it's very unlikely because I haven't really talked about that like very openly, but I plan to make a video about it later on. So if you've ever heard me say anything about appeal or anything like that, I've mentioned the idea of having a successful image. And I think that when you know what you want, or you're exploring what you want, you know, you're on your way to something you want, and just being aware of the idea of I want this or I don't want this is very, very useful. And tailoring your workflow to this idea and giving yourself the tools to succeed in receiving what you want out of an image is, for me, like really, really useful. I can't say enough about that. All right. So another aspect, I think, of exploring your workflow or being aware of it, I'm always going to go back to this central idea here, is that I think it really helps avoid stagnation and art block. I think that art block, for me at least, my interpretation of it is that it has a lot to do, or it's quite worsened by doing things we don't like and not realizing we don't like it, or not admitting to ourselves, or not investigating things that suit us or that we are good at. You know, I think that if you try to just be productive, make things, and you don't think about you making them, the person making them, and how to do yourself some favors in terms of either just caring for yourself and your own sustainability, or how you think, or what you enjoy, or what you like. I think that if you don't take these things into account, you're much more likely to suffer in general, but also suffer of art block and stagnation. Because a lot of that, I feel like, has to do with, let's say, either it's a lack of willingness or a lack of awareness to, I'm getting really deep right now, right? To face these things, yeah. So anyways, I think the workflow, just to bring it back to a more simple place, I think that workflow and process can help you avoid those things. So right now you'll see me using some pretty, and throughout the piece, just using pretty big brushes, big movements, big statements, you know? I really have less and less patience for, and actually people, some of my best friends know this, that I often use, I tend to like toggle the last thing I've done in the history states, just like undo, redo, or a few undos and a few redos. I really like looking at, is what I've just done in the last moment or so effective? Is it doing something? This is something that I have started thinking about since, ever since I got a display tablet, because I felt like I was so close to my image that I couldn't understand what I was doing in the big picture. And people will often say that if you step away, or if you come back, like go do something and come back to your painting, you have perspective. So the thing I like to do to have real-time perspective, because I don't like being so close to my painting, is that I will be painting on my display tablet. Sorry about the noise, if you hear it. I'll be painting on my display tablet, and I'll have another version of my image, like another canvas, on my other screen. And that screen is quite a few more, I mean, it's not that far away, but it's a few more feet away from my face, so that I will have more perspective. And basically, for me, it really helps knowing that I'm actually the few strokes I've just made, or the few, the last things I've done, have been helping me get in the direction that I want. And if you haven't been thinking about what you want out of your paintings, and you're more reflexive, or just kind of going through it with habit, maybe this is a strange aspect, like to imagine evaluating your recent choices in your painting or your recent brushstrokes. And maybe it's not such a good thing. I don't know. Like, I feel like you can have several different aspects to it. It can also get you sometimes sometimes it's not effective. Sometimes you want to be able to just get into a flow and not be checking if what you're doing is useful. So I really think that it suits it depends what you want out of the painting, what you want out of what you're doing. But in general, as a person, I think that it's useful to evaluate the usefulness of what you're doing, or the joy that you seek. I just think it's useful to check, and ask yourself questions. So here the painting is at a stage where it's very simple still. It's completely simple. I have the light statements that I was trying to make going quite strong. And I've begun adding brushstrokes and texture because I think it makes it more pleasant to the eye. Something I realized in the last few years is that I really like pieces that are both graphic and painterly at the same time. Pieces that are very precise, but whimsical. I don't know. And I think this can come across in treatment too. Yeah, so this is something I'm always trying to gravitate towards, having a little bit of both. And I think I've always done that, if I think about it. I've always enjoyed graphic element, but also painterly, and just depending on what you want. You can tailor what you're doing, like I said. I'm going to say some of the other ideas I had written down, because I think I might be elaborating too much on some of them. And I'm going to also drink some water and take a breath, because you might notice I'm speaking very quickly. Or maybe I'm not, I don't know. Also, in the future, I hope to not mention my own speaking speed while I'm making a talk. All right. Sorry about those mouth sounds. Anyways, right now I'm in the painting. I'm just kind of clarifying that there's a nest in the tree, because it got completely lost. And it's just a little secondary storytelling element, because in my mind, this bird is born here. I just think it's like a sweet little tidbit story. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna start saying some other things I had listed, and I'm not going to elaborate so much on them. I'm just going to go through them. Okay, so I had mentioned that I think that thinking of your workflow and being aware of it helps avoid stagnation or art block. It doesn't solve it, but it's just another tool in the toolkit. And I think that something else it does is helps you discover new techniques. And I already talked about that earlier. I just think that it can help you discover something you didn't even know you enjoyed, or you didn't even know you could use. And then later, even when you're not painting, you can think, oh, I could use that for that. Or that could help me do this idea that I've been thinking about trying, but I never knew how. Or, just kind of give yourself the tools, because you can discover new techniques. Something else is that you can explore and loosen up. So basically, a lot of the things I've been saying, this whole time, this whole darn time, have been about productivity, you know, kind of related to that, kind of related to not wasting time, doing things faster, doing things better, doing things that will be more successful. But this is just one aspect. I think that loosening up and having fun and just discovering, like being more, for example, you can be forcing creative solutions and making yourself have unfamiliar situations in process to loosen up and to explore, because you don't need everything to be amazing, and you don't need to be good at everything. You can explore things and have just more creative flow. And you can have paintings where you change your workflow and you do things you don't understand. And then you can have paintings, like I said, when I say paintings, I mean anything, like drawing a 3D thing, whatever. And you can have pieces where you do understand what you're doing. And you can, as you explore workflow and process, you can almost think in your head like of different categories where you've prepared or you've considered different approaches. And you can say to yourself, sorry, I need to breathe for a second. You can say to yourself, I'm trying to do this in one take, by the way. So this is why I'm keeping all this stuff in, because I'm a human too. So anyways, what I want to say is that you can have approaches that you take for professional work that you don't do the same thing as for personal work. And this is, I find, really interesting. And like I said, it just helps you develop a really interesting toolkit for yourself. Keep it interesting. Yeah, I probably said several times. So another thing is that your process and your workflow can really suit the purpose of your piece. You can imagine or explore the purpose of your piece before or during your painting, and suit what you're doing to the purpose of your piece. I think it will be more successful and more fun as well. You might feel more accomplished and rewarded rather than like, I don't know what to do or how to do it or what I want. Yeah. Yeah, I already said that you can have different workflows and approaches for personal and professional. Another aspect is speed and concise expression. You can work to build speed, or you can force speed with time and tools that like make you really productive and quick. And you can also, on purpose, go slow. Take your time, explore things that take longer. So I really like that you can have both extremes, and both of them are valid and enjoyable and worth trying. And concise expression for me is about, like what I was saying before, is what I'm doing getting there? Is it like I'm trying to do all these things and it's not really working? Or am I being concise with my process and my workflow? I think it's a really interesting thing to consider. Yeah. So another element is exploring assumptions. Some of us have an idea of what our work should look like, or what it has to look like, or what people will like. And I think if you explore different processes and workflows and styles and anything, you will explore your own assumptions that you have for yourself and for other people's work, and just expand your horizons. Okay, I probably won't get to say everything I wanted to say, but that's okay. I wanted to add that I like my current tools and techniques because they avoid style things I did not enjoy. So there's things about painting that I used to not enjoy, and when I make my workflow work better for me, I enjoy painting more. And I think that anybody can access this. And my current style and approach, it's not perfect yet, but it gets closer to expressing my interests and perpetuating my interest. So I'm more interested and I'm more likely to do things I'm interested in because I'm aware of how I can give myself tools to just keep getting to the point. Yeah. Also, I'm learning from seeing other people's workflows. We all are. And also, I used to see people always painting on the same layer, or painting on one layer, or painting like in ways that are not productive. And this is kind of what got me thinking about this. Although I think that that's excellent if you're doing it intentionally, if you are opening up Photoshop and not knowing what to do, and you use painting on one layer for several years without even exploring other techniques that the digital medium offers you, I think you're missing out. But if you're intentionally limiting yourself, beautiful. Another thing is, okay, just keep going, okay? And allow yourself to reach your potential. And I really hope that people understand and grow to understand as they grow as artists, that they can really give themselves the tools to succeed. No one's going to give them to you. People will help you, but you have to allow yourself to reach your highest potential. This is something that's really important to me. And I think that we are the masters of our own destiny. Of course, you know, we deal with the world, but go for it and allow yourself to succeed. Yeah, that's what I think. Good luck and thanks for watching. I hope you have a great time. Oh, and feel free to ask me about some of the stuff if you found it confusing.